It was my first time in New York City, and to say I was excited would be an understatement. I had always dreamed of wandering through its streets, seeing the towering skyscrapers and experiencing the iconic landmarks, the Empire State Building, Times Square, Central Park. I was a 26-year-old solo traveler, ready to immerse myself in the pulse of the city that never sleeps. To keep things budget-friendly, I'd booked a bed at the New York Loft Hostel, a place that came highly recommended in online reviews for its affordability and decent location near the city center. It wasn't the Ritz, but it promised to be an authentic part of the New York experience, and honestly, I wasn't picky. When I arrived, the hostel looked a bit run down. The front desk clerk barely acknowledged me, handing me the key with a quiet, "Room 4, top bunk." She didn't seem too interested in helping me with anything else, which should have been my first red flag, but I chalked it up to the rush of the check-in process. The room was basic, cramped even. 8 beds in total, stacked in 2 rows, and I picked the top bunk closest to the window. As I tossed my backpack onto the bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about the place didn't feel quite right. I couldn't put my finger on it. Maybe it was the strange vibe in the air, or how quiet everything seemed. But for now, I decided to ignore it. After all, I was in New York. What could possibly go wrong? I unpacked my bag quickly, trying to keep a low profile. The room was already populated with a few other travelers, most of them keeping to themselves. The silence was almost suffocating. There was a middle-aged man sitting in the corner, his back turned to the rest of the room, but every now and then, I'd catch him glancing in my direction. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't even acknowledge their presence. He just sat there watching. His eyes were unsettling, almost too focused. I figured he was just another loner traveler, not interested in small talk. Still, a small knot began to form in my stomach, but I pushed it down. Maybe it was the newness of the place or the fact that I was in a city that never slept, but there was something about the room that felt off. The other guests barely interacted, too absorbed in their phones or lost in their thoughts. It felt like I wasn't in a hostel but some kind of holding cell, a place where people go but don't want to be. That night, after a long day of sightseeing, I was exhausted and ready to crash. The room was eerily quiet, the only sound being the faint hum of the old air conditioner. I climbed into my bunk, pulled the blanket over me and closed my eyes, trying to shake the unease that had followed me all day. But as I drifted off to sleep, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching. The dead of night came and I woke up with a sudden start, my heart pounding in my chest. The room was pitch black, but I could feel it, the unmistakable sensation of eyes on me. I blinked, adjusting my sight to the shadows, and that's when I saw him. The man from the corner, sitting perfectly still in his spot. His eyes were locked on me, unblinking, unyielding. My throat went dry. I told myself it was a trick of the dark, a figment of my half-dreaming mind. I tried to roll over and go back to sleep, but the stare wouldn't fade. Every time I shut my eyes, I could feel his gaze on my skin, like an invisible weight pressing down on me. I opened my eyes again. There he was, still staring, his face expressionless, his posture rigid, not even shifting an inch. I lay there, frozen, unsure of what to do. Should I say something? Or just pretend it wasn't happening? I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he was just tired, maybe he had insomnia, maybe he was just looking at the ceiling, but it appeared as though he was staring at me. But the longer I stayed awake, the more that rationality slipped away. His eyes never left me. I closed my eyes again, my body tense with anxiety, and eventually sleep won over. But the feeling of being watched lingered, haunting me throughout the night. The next morning when I woke up, the man was gone. No one mentioned anything. The others were still just as quiet, absorbed in their own worlds. But the discomfort never left. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had happened during the night. Something I couldn't explain. The next night, I tried to dismiss the unease I felt. Maybe I was just imagining things, I thought. But as the hours crept by and the room settled into its usual silence, that same feeling of being watched returned. I tried to ignore it, my mind preoccupied with the day's adventures in the city. But sleep was hard to come by, my nerves too frayed from the night before. Just as I was about to drift off, I heard it. Faint at first, like the sound of distant conversation, then growing clearer and more distinct. Whispering. soft voices coming from somewhere near the bottom bunk. I tensed. My body went still. The whispers didn't sound like normal talking. There was something off about them, like they were meant to be heard but not understood. I strained to make out the words, but they were too muffled, too distorted to decipher. My breath caught in my throat as I slowly turned my head toward the source. There, in the darkness, the middle-aged man was sitting up again. But this time, his head was tilted at an odd, almost unnatural angle, and his eyes were still locked on me, unblinking, unwavering. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. I felt my pulse quicken. I couldn't take it anymore. I finally gathered enough courage to speak up, my voice barely above a whisper. "What's going on? Why are you?" He cut me off, smiling eerily. "I was just making sure you're all right," he said, his voice calm, too calm. "You don't need to worry." The words sent a chill down my spine, but I couldn't make sense of them. My skin prickled with an unsettling feeling, and I quickly turned my back to him, pretending to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come, not with the whispers still echoing in my mind. And the next night, the whispers returned. Only this time they weren't muffled, they were clear, and the room felt heavier, more suffocating. I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was something terribly wrong with this place, and it was only just beginning to surface. The fear that had settled over me was hard to shake off. Every little creak of the floorboards, every soft shuffle in the corner of the room, made my heart race. I tried to sleep, but the thought of those unsettling whispers kept me awake, tossing and turning in my bunk. The man had said he was just making sure I was all right, but the way he said it lingered in my mind, gnawing at me. Was it really just concern, or was there something darker at play? My paranoia reached its peak the following night when, as I lay staring into the darkness, I noticed something strange. The middle-aged man was in his usual spot again, sitting silently on the edge of his bed, phone in hand. At first I thought nothing of it, but then I noticed the angle of the phone, pointed directly at my bunk, the faintest light flickering on the screen. I held my breath, straining to make out what he was doing. The screen was dim, but I could make out a camera app open on his phone. It wasn't just idle, it looked as though it was actively recording. My stomach churned. I tried to brush it off, maybe I was imagining things, but the more I thought about it, the more the feeling of being watched consumed me. My pulse quickened, and I fought the urge to confront him right then and there. The next morning, the man was gone again, as if he'd vanished without a trace, leaving me in a panic-riddled haze. I couldn't shake the thought of his phone. Had he been recording me? A terrifying thought bloomed in my mind. I needed to know. As casually as I could, I sneaked a glance at his bed. My eyes locked on the pillow where he'd been sitting just hours ago. And there, hidden beneath the fabric, was a small, old camera, barely visible. My blood ran cold as I carefully lifted it, confirming my worst fear. A tiny hidden camera had been watching me while I slept. Shock gripped me. The thought of the man secretly filming me while I lay unconscious made my skin crawl. I couldn't believe it. Every minute in that room felt like an invasion, and I had no idea how far his reach really extended. What had he captured? How long had he been doing this? I couldn't stay there a moment longer. I confronted the man, my voice shaking, and showed him the hidden camera. His response? A chilling, nonchalant smile. "It's nothing," he said. "Just something I use for personal purposes. There's nothing inappropriate. I just like to record people while they sleep." His words barely registered. I was too horrified to react. The man didn't seem to be disturbed by my discovery of the hidden camera. If anything, his calm demeanor only deepened my sense of dread. I had expected him to react with panic, perhaps apologize, but instead, he just stared at me with that same unsettling smile. My voice trembled as I confronted him. "Why were you recording me? What the hell is going on here?" He didn't flinch. "You're not the first to notice," he said, his voice low and smooth. "But you'll be the last." I froze, his words sinking in. I wasn't the first? What did that mean? My stomach turned as he continued, unfazed by my anger or fear. "This hostel," he said, leaning in slightly, "isn't just any ordinary place. It's a haven for people who don't want to be found, for those who need to disappear. You see, every guest who comes here leaves, in their own way." I didn't understand at first. My heart pounded as he went on. The people who stay here. They vanish, he whispered, his voice dropping even lower, barely audible. One by one. They go missing without a trace and no one cares. It's been like this for years. And I've been watching every single one of them. My mind reeled. Vanishing guests? I thought I was just dealing with a creepy man, but this was something much darker. You're telling me people disappear? And you've been tracking them? Watching them? I stammered. He gave a slow, almost pitying smile. I'm not just watching. I've been a part of the pattern. It's always the same. I follow them, observe them. And they never realize that they're part of something bigger. The hostel is like a magnet for people with nowhere else to go, and they leave or disappear. It doesn't matter. My head spun. The unease I'd felt from the beginning, the strange atmosphere in the hostel, it all started to make a sickening sense. Before I could respond, he continued, the staff here? They know. They've seen it happen over and over again. But there's no record, no proof. Just whispers. And they don't care. People like you, though, they'll notice eventually. Just like you have. His words struck like ice water, cold and harsh. He wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. I was terrified, trapped in a place I couldn't escape from. The more he spoke, the less I felt like a guest in a hostel. I felt like I was part of a much darker story, one that had no happy ending. I stumbled backward, desperate to get away from him, but there was nowhere to go. This man wasn't just a stranger watching me. He was part of the very fabric of this twisted place. And now I was caught in it too. I rushed to the front desk, my mind racing. The receptionist didn't even look up as I burst into the lobby. I need to leave, I said urgently, barely able to hold myself together. That man in the room, he's been watching me. He's recording me. What the hell is going on here? The receptionist sighed, a bored look on his face. Oh, him? He's been here before. There's not much we can do about it. He's harmless, just keeps to himself. Complaints about him are nothing new. Harmless? My blood ran cold. I was on the verge of a breakdown, but the staff didn't seem to care, and it felt like they were in on it, complicit in the horror I was enduring. There were no records, no warnings. Just another lost guest, probably forgotten in a few days. There was no escape. Not even the staff would help. I was utterly alone. Fear gripped me tighter than ever. I couldn't stay here another minute. I was suffocating, trapped in a nightmare with no way out. My hands shook as I packed my bag, my mind a whirlwind of panic. Every creak of the old building seemed to echo louder, like a warning, a reminder that I was being watched from every corner. I rushed to the front door, praying that I could just leave this place behind. My eyes scanned the lobby, but I didn't see the receptionist, thank God. I was about to push the door open when a voice stopped me in my tracks. You can't leave, it whispered. I froze. That voice, it was the man. He was standing in the doorway, his silhouette casting a long shadow in the dim light. His eyes were wide, and that unsettling grin spread across his face once again. Let me go, I demanded, my voice barely more than a whisper. I'm leaving. I don't care what you say. The man didn't move, just stood there blocking my exit. I was trapped, and the weight of his presence pressed in on me like the walls themselves were closing. You're not ready, he said softly, his voice still eerily calm. You're too curious. You've uncovered things you shouldn't know. Now, you belong here too. My heart raced in my chest. I was paralyzed with terror. I thought about the people who had vanished, the strange atmosphere in the hostel. Everything started to blur together. I had no choice but to leave. I had to escape. With a burst of adrenaline, I shoved past him, nearly knocking him off balance as I darted toward the door. He didn't try to stop me physically, just stood there watching me with those cold, calculating eyes. I slammed the door open and ran into the cold New York night. The city felt more alive than ever, the lights of the streets blurring around me. I didn't care about anything else. I needed to get far away from that hostel, from him. I barely registered the sounds of the city around me as I reached for my phone. My fingers fumbled as I booked the first flight back home. I couldn't stay another second in that city. I left the hostel, but the feeling of being watched, the sense that something followed me, lingered in the pit of my stomach. I didn't know if I was truly safe, but at least I wasn't in that place anymore. I couldn't stay in New York a minute longer, so I fled. But it wasn't over. I had no idea what awaited me when I got home. Weeks passed since I left New York, but the haunting feeling didn't fade. I thought I was safe, that the nightmare was over, but I was wrong. It was just beginning. One night, as I scrolled through social media, I noticed a new message in my inbox. The profile was anonymous, no name, no photo, just a strange string of numbers in the bio. My stomach churned as I clicked the message open. It was a photo of me, taken in the hostel. I was asleep in the bunk, my body curled up under the thin, faded blanket. The angle of the shot was so precise, so calculated, it couldn't have been taken by anyone else but the man. The chilling truth settled over me like a blanket of ice. He had been watching me even after I left. The message accompanying the photo was simple but enough to send my pulse skyrocketing. "I'm still watching you." A cold wave of dread washed over me. I wasn't free. I had thought I'd escaped, but this was far from over. The stalker had followed me home. It wasn't just the hostel anymore, it was everywhere I went, lurking in the shadows of my life. I looked over my shoulder, but the room was empty. No one was there. Still, the chill in the air, the feeling of being watched, it never went away. And I realized with a deep sense of dread that I would never be free. Not truly. The man's eyes were still on me. Always. I'm originally from a small town in Oregon. Real quiet place where nothing really happens, and honestly that's what started to weigh on me after a while. I just turned 22, and something about being stuck in the same routines, the same faces, same streets, I needed a break. So when I got accepted into a short film festival in LA, I figured it was the perfect excuse to get away for a bit. Something new, something loud, something different. I didn't exactly have a huge budget, so I found this hostel through a travel app. It was right in Hollywood, just off the main drag. Looked okay in the pictures, had decent reviews, and was cheap enough for me to stay the whole week without going broke. I told myself I wouldn't be spending much time there anyway, just a place to sleep. Plus, I'd heard hostels are where you meet people, travelers, artists, weirdos. The good kind of weird. I got into LA late, like after midnight. Took a lift from LAX, and the driver dropped me off in front of this old building with a neon sign that just said, Hostel. It wasn't flashy or cool looking or anything. It kinda looked like it used to be something else, like a motel or maybe even an old office building. But whatever. I was exhausted. The lobby was dead quiet. Some guy behind the desk barely looked up when I gave my name. He just handed me a key card and muttered, "Room 204. The hallway smelled faintly of cheap cleaner and something else I couldn't place. I tried not to overthink it. Room 204 had 4 bunk beds, 8 beds total. Most of them were empty when I got there. There was just one guy in the corner, lying on the bottom bunk with his phone out. No light on, just that blue glow from the screen lighting up his face. I said, "Hey," as I walked in, but he didn't say anything. Didn't even glance at me. Just kept tapping on his phone like I wasn't even there. I figured he was tired or just one of those introverted travelers. No big deal. I tossed my backpack on the top bunk across from his and started to settle in. But even as I lay down and closed my eyes, I couldn't help feeling like I was being watched. Next morning, I woke up to the sound of someone zipping up a backpack. A couple more beds had new guests now, 2 guys talking quietly near the window, and a girl brushing her hair by the mirror. Normal hostel vibe. But the guy from last night? Still in the exact same spot, still glued to his phone, like he hadn't moved. I tried to be friendly, asked if he needed the outlet I was using to charge my phone. He didn't even look up, just shook his head slowly. Throughout the day I kept noticing him watching people, but he'd always look away the second you caught him. Like he didn't want to be caught staring but couldn't help himself either. Once I saw him watching his own reflection in the glass window, like he was waiting for it to do something. There was a camera, one of those small digital ones, sitting on his bed. For a second I assumed he might be a film student too. Maybe he was working on a project? That evening I was chatting with a girl named Riley who had just checked in. She leaned in and said, "Hey, is it just me or does the dude in the corner give you weird vibes?" I laughed it off. "It's Hollywood," I said. "Everyone's weird here." But honestly, yeah, he gave me the creeps. That night, I came back to the hostel around 11. I'd spent the day checking out Griffith Park, did the touristy stuff, Hollywood Walk of Fame, cheap tacos, random photos. I was beat. The hallway lights in the hostel were dim, kind of yellowish, and the place had this quiet buzz to it. As I passed by the mirror outside our room, something weird happened. My reflection looked normal, but for a split second, I swear I saw someone moving behind me. I turned around instantly. No one. Empty hallway. I stood there for a second, heart slightly racing, then brushed it off. Probably just tired. Inside the room, everyone else seemed asleep. Lights off except the faint glow of someone's phone. I went to brush my teeth in the shared bathroom. Whole time I felt this weird tension, like someone was behind me, but every time I checked it was just the stalls. When I got back I nearly dropped my phone. That quiet guy. He was now standing in front of the hallway mirror, facing it, but not looking at himself. Just staring into it, dead still, like he was watching something beyond the glass. I whispered, "You good, man?" He didn't reply. Just slowly smiled without turning. I hurried back to my bed and climbed into the top bunk. Pulled the blanket over, trying to sleep. That's when I heard it. A faint click, like a phone camera. I peeked down. He was in his bed again. Face glowing blue from the screen. Phone slightly angled toward me. When I asked what he was doing, he just mumbled, "Texting someone," and turned the screen away. But he never stopped smiling. The next day, I tried to convince myself I was just being paranoid. Well, it's weird. Hostels are weird. I was probably overthinking it. Later that afternoon, I got back to the room and found one of the other guests, Sarah, sitting on her bunk, clearly frustrated. "Someone took my charger," she said, pulling her bag apart. "I know I packed it." A few minutes later, she looked up at me, visibly uneasy. "I zipped my bag shut this morning. It was half open when I came back. Something's off here." That evening, she left. "I'm booking a hotel," she said. "That guy in the corner gives me the creeps." I didn't blame her. That night, I tried sleeping early, but something woke me up again, heavy breathing. Not snoring, just slow, heavy breaths. Right near my bed. I stayed still, listening. Then peeked over the edge. He was sitting upright on his lower bunk across from me, just staring up at me. His face was blank, but his eyes were locked onto mine. And then he whispered, "You shouldn't stay here too long." I sat up, frozen. But he just turned and laid back down like nothing happened. Next morning, I asked the front desk if Sarah had checked out. They said there was no record of her leaving. Her bed was made. Her bag was gone. But no one saw her walk out. It was like she just disappeared. After Sarah vanished, I couldn't relax. Everything about that place started feeling off. The creaky stairs, the flickering lights, the way the front desk clerk never seemed to really look at me. But it was that guy, he was the center of it all. One afternoon when I knew everyone would be out, including him, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I searched his area. I waited until the hallway was silent, then quietly opened the drawer by his bunk. Empty. But under the mattress, I found something. An old, scratched-up smartphone. The screen lit up, locked. But it had a motion detector notification from a camera app. I took it to my bunk, and to my shock, it unlocked instantly. Either it was set to guest mode, or maybe it recognized my face. Dozens of videos. The first one? Me, sleeping. Tossing, turning. Timestamp 2 nights ago. Next video, another guest changing clothes. Another, someone crying in their bed. My chest tightened. Then I saw her, Sarah. She was sitting on her bed, looking distressed, talking to someone off camera. "Please stop filming me," she said. Then, a hand slowly reached over the lens and covered it. I felt sick. I started scanning through more, and in every single one, that same guy was in the background. Always watching. Always smiling. It wasn't just creepy. It was dangerous. I knew I had to confront him. Or get out. But part of me needed answers. Who was he? And why the hell was no one doing anything? I didn't care if I looked crazy. I was done pretending this was normal. I waited for him to come back. I sat on my bunk, gripping the old phone in my hoodie pocket, heart thumping like it was trying to escape my chest. Every creak of the hallway floor made me jolt. And then he walked in. Come. Casual. Like nothing had happened. He looked at me, nodded slightly, and went straight to his bed. I stood up. Hey, I said. He didn't respond. I pulled out the phone. You want to explain this? He turned slowly, saw it in my hand, and smiled. That same smile I saw in the videos. That eerie, offbeat smirk like he was enjoying a private joke. You weren't supposed to find that, he said softly. I stepped back, breath stuck in my throat. What the hell is wrong with you? He didn't answer. Just tilted his head. Then he said, You're my favorite one so far. I froze. Favorite one? I grabbed my bag without another word and bolted out of the room. Down the stairs. Straight to the front desk. The clerk looked half asleep. I started rambling. The guy in my room, he's recording people, he's dangerous. Call the cops. He just blinked at me. Then said, People complain about that guy all the time. What? So do something. He shrugged. He's not even in the system. I stared at him. What? No check-in record. No ID. Nothing. That's when the dread really hit me. He wasn't just some creepy guest. He wasn't supposed to be there at all. I didn't stay a second longer. I booked a hotel from the sidewalk, standing right outside that cursed hostel with my hands shaking so bad I could barely type. I didn't even care how much it cost. I just needed out. That night, locked inside a real hotel room with a deadbolt and no bunk beds, I barely slept. Kept thinking I'd see that guy's face peering in through the peephole. I kept checking the corners of the room, half expecting to find a camera pointed at my bed. The next morning, I went to LAPD and filed a report. I gave them the hostel's name, the phone I found, the guy's description, everything. They went back with me that afternoon. But the guy was gone. So was the phone. The mattress was stripped. The staff suddenly claimed they had no idea what I was talking about. No cameras in the hallways. No guest logs. Nothing. I posted online about it, Reddit, travel forums, even the hostel's review page. Every post either got flagged or disappeared within hours. And that's when I realized this wasn't just some creep. Something worse was going on at that hostel. Weeks passed. I thought I'd finally escaped it, that nightmare behind me. But then it started. A text message from an unknown number. At first, I thought it was a wrong number. But when I saw the image, my heart stopped. It was a photo of me, sleeping soundly in my new hotel room. No one else was there. The next message came a few days later, another photo. This time it was from inside the hostel bathroom mirror. The reflection was blurry, but I could make out a shape. I couldn't breathe. My eyes went wide. The last text was simple, see you soon. I didn't know who or what was sending them. But I knew one thing for sure, I would never be able to unsee it. I'd been dreaming about visiting San Francisco for years. The city always felt like something out of a movie, cable cars climbing steep hills, fog rolling in over the bay, that iconic Golden Gate Bridge. I'm 24, from a small town in Michigan, and I'd finally saved enough to make this trip happen. A solo adventure. Something to shake up the monotony of everyday life. Since I was on a tight budget, I didn't go for a hotel. Instead, I booked a cheap hostel right in the heart of the city. The reviews were decent, nothing fancy but clean, safe, and central. Just a place to sleep after a day of exploring. When I got there, though, it wasn't exactly what the pictures showed. The lobby smelled damp, and the lighting was dim, like a place stuck in the early 2000s. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. The front desk guy barely looked up when I walked in. He slid over an old-fashioned key without saying much, just mumbled, "Room 204. Upstairs." The room had 8 beds, cramped close together. I took the top bunk near the window. Something felt off, but I figured I was just tired from the flight. The room was quiet, too quiet for 8 people. A few of the beds were occupied, but no one spoke. Everyone either had headphones in or lay still, turned away. It wasn't like the hostels I'd seen on YouTube, with backpackers trading stories and laughing over ramen noodles. This place felt heavy. There was one guy who stood out, though. Older than the rest of us, maybe late 40s or early 50s. Gray hoodie, unshaven, skin pale like he hadn't seen the sun in a while. He sat upright on his bunk near the corner, staring, Not at anyone directly, but more like, through people. His eyes didn't move. I tried to make some small talk. Just a, "Hey, how's it going?" He didn't answer. Just blinked slowly, then looked away. Later I saw him watching me while I unpacked. The moment I made eye contact, he looked down and started fidgeting with something in his hands. I laughed it off in my head. Okay, weird but harmless. It's San Francisco. People are different. Still, as I crawled into my bunk that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was still watching me. I must have been asleep for a couple of hours when something stirred me. It wasn't loud, a faint rustling sound followed by soft whispers. At first I thought I was dreaming, but the longer I stayed still, the clearer it got. It sounded like someone whispering from directly below me, like under the bunk. Muffled and breathy, just a few words I couldn't make out. I lifted my head slightly and peeked over the side of my bunk. Everyone looked asleep. The room was dimly lit by the hallway light bleeding in through the crack in the door. I lowered myself a little and looked down toward the bed beneath me. No one there. The bed was empty. But the whispers continued. I held my breath, trying to catch even one word. I think I heard "stay," or maybe "don't go." I'm not even sure. Then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The older man, he was sitting up in his bed again, wide awake, facing me. Just staring. His head tilted slightly, expression blank, unblinking. I jolted upright, my heart pounding in my throat. He didn't flinch. Didn't say a word. I laid back down, turned my back to him, and stayed awake the rest of the night, pretending to sleep. The next day I told myself I was just tired. That I imagined the whispers. That maybe the old man was just off. Maybe he had dementia or something. After breakfast, most of the guests had cleared out. I stayed back, wanting to rest up before heading to Chinatown. That's when I noticed something weird. There was this small utility door in the corner of the room. I had assumed it was a closet or cleaning storage. It had a padlock on it when I arrived. But now it was slightly open. Just a crack. I don't know what got into me, but I got up and pushed the door slowly. It creaked open like something out of a bad horror movie. The closet was tiny, barely a walk-in. Just an old wooden chair, and on the wall, a black and white photograph in a broken frame. I stepped closer. It showed what looked like former Hostel staff. Dated clothes, beehive hairdos, had to be from the 60s. My eyes locked on one face. It looked exactly like the older man in the room. Suddenly, a cold gust hit me from behind, like someone had opened a freezer. Then the whispering started again. This time it was clear. "Help, please, help me." I turned to run, and the old man was standing in the doorway blocking the exit. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly. And then he was gone. Just like that. I left the room immediately. Heart pounding. I needed air, needed to be anywhere but inside that building. At the front desk, the same guy who'd checked me and was scrolling on his phone, barely looking up when I approached. I tried to stay calm. "Hey, that closet in room 3C? It was open. There was an old photo in there. One of the people looked just like this guy in my room." His expression didn't change. But he set his phone down. "That room's not supposed to be opened," he muttered. "Closet stays locked. It's been locked for years." But it wasn't. And I saw someone. An older guy. Pale. Quiet. Always watching. The receptionist sighed, finally meeting my eyes. "You're not the first to say that. Look, man, this place has a past. Long before it was a hostel, it used to be a halfway house. Run down. Bad funding. People disappeared. Some say they were taken, others say they never left." He leaned in closer. "You should stay away from room 3C. Especially that closet. Guests who go snooping in there, well, they don't stick around long." I felt sick. Back in the room, I checked the photo again. The man in the image wasn't just like the guy in my room, it was him. The weird part? The photo was dated 1966. And every time I looked away from the frame, I swore the man's expression changed, smiling just a little wider. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed in bed, eyes fixed on the dark shape of the older man across the room. He hadn't moved in hours, just sat on his bunk. Around 3 a.m. he suddenly stood and walked, slowly, deliberately, right up to my bed. I froze. He leaned close, whispered, You opened the door, didn't you? My throat was dry. What do you mean? The closet. You let them in. My skin crawled. He sat down on the bottom bunk next to me. For the first time, his voice had emotion, sadness, regret. I came here in 1966. I never checked out. None of us did. We were forgotten like we never existed. The whispers, they're what's left of us. They want to be seen. To be remembered. I swallowed hard. Are you saying you're not alive? He smiled faintly. Not really. Not anymore. He looked at me, then really looked. His eyes were hollow, like deep tunnels with no light at the end. You've heard them now. Seen too much. The hostel doesn't let go once it finds someone who listens. I wanted to scream, run, anything. But I couldn't move. His stare had me pinned like a bug under glass. And then he disappeared. Like he'd never been there at all. The next morning I packed in a panic. My hands trembled with every item I shoved into my bag. I didn't care if my toothbrush stayed behind, I just needed to get out. I rushed past the front desk. The same receptionist looked up at me with that dead expression. Checking out early? I didn't answer. Just kept moving. Outside the sunlight felt wrong. Like it wasn't reaching me. My shadow felt slower. Like something else was dragging it. I found a nearby cafe with Wi-Fi and booked the earliest flight home. I didn't go back to the hostel. Not even to grab the free breakfast. While waiting for my ride to the airport, I saw something, or someone, watching me from across the street. It was the older man. Same clothes. Same stillness. Only this time he wasn't blinking. Just watching. Before I stepped into the car, I heard his voice again, clear as day even from across the street. It's too late for me, but maybe not for you. I never looked back. I thought I was done with it. Home was quiet again. I tried to forget the hostel, to pretend it had just been a weird, sleep-deprived nightmare. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived. No return address, just postmarked from San Francisco. Inside was an old photograph. A faded black and white shot of the hostel staff, dated 1966. 8 people stood shoulder to shoulder. I scanned their faces. Then I saw it. The man, the same older man, was there, circled in red ink. Same face, same eyes. Same expression. And below the photo, scribbled in shaky handwriting. You were too curious. Now you belong here too. I dropped the letter. My phone buzzed. A voice message played, barely a whisper. We're still watching. The lights in my room flickered. And from the mirror, behind my reflection, something shifted. Something dark. And smiling.